done. We all know if you hit all three of those, or even 2 or 3, you can be a better team. That doesn't necessarily mean it will dramatically change where you finish in the standings. We know Harbaugh is a perfect fit for the Chargers, but they still play in a division with the Chiefs. We know the Bears are going to be a much better offensive team, but the Packers and Lions are stacked. So a lot of teams, I think Chicago is going to be the most improved team. They just happen to play in a division which offensively is the most loaded division in the league by a long shot offensively, with 3 offensive coaches. So I'm going to lay out this morning, and it's pretty easy when you really start thinking about it in terms of best quarterback, worst quarterback, and that's kind of how this stuff mostly works. So here we go. Let's start AFC. I'm just going to predict the standings. In the AFC East, I have Josh Allen, just like Mahomes or Brady. I'm going to win the division for as long as he's in his prime. Number 2 is Miami. I love their roster. I think it's the best roster. They don't have real holes here. They don't have a great O-line. It's not bad. Number 2 with a great offensive coach. Jets, Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, is not in his prime. He's not as good as Jordan Love today. Jets finished 3rd. And then I think it's pretty obvious New England's got a rookie quarterback and a rookie coach. I did like the pick, and I do like what they did in the draft, finally going heavy offense. But I feel pretty good about that division. Let's go to the AFC North. Baltimore was the best regular season team last year. Argument the best.
Okay, actually, let me go back. I'll just pause it between each setup. So I actually would switch around the Jets and the Miami Dolphins. And I think that the Jets will be fighting the Buffalo Bills for number 1. This is if the Jets roster stays healthy. That is, if Aaron Rodgers makes a recovery and the Jets are healthy, I think they will win games. I think they will win a lot of games. I think Aaron Rodgers is obviously light years better than Zach Wilson, and yet the Jets still won some games and even, battled with the Super Bowl champions of the Chiefs. So I think if Aaron Rodgers is healthy and everyone else stays healthy, which is the big question mark, that is the big, gigantic if, I think the Jets will actually be fighting with the Buffalo Bills. But at the same time, to be clear, when I say that when I switch places with the Miami Dolphins, it's not to say that the Dolphins are now, as low as the Patriots. Like, I think they'll be fighting as well, but I just lean more towards the Jets and the Bills. But at the same time, I don't have a lot of trust in the Bills either. I don't have trust in that franchise and Sean McDermott. So I really think this division is up for the taking. And, I think Aaron Rodgers is more dedicated than ever to have a true bounce back, ball out year. He wants to show the world, look who I am. I am Aaron Rodgers. I am invincible. I can come back from an Achilles injury, win an MVP, lead the Jets to a Super Bowl. Like, that is what's on his agenda. He wants to do it all. He has a tremendous amount of pride and a very large ego. So he is going to do everything in his power to ball out. So I just would not just say, the Jets are not good, this, that. Again, injuries are very possible with the Jets because they have an injury-prone and older roster. So, who really knows?
Do like what they did in the draft, finally going heavy offense, but I feel pretty good about that division. Let's go to the AFC North. Baltimore was the best regular season team last year. Argument the best run team in football. I think they're going to be great again in the regular season. Cincinnati gets Joe Burrow back. When Joe Burrow's healthy, he either wins this division or gets to the playoffs. And they've been noisy, a lot of noise I don't like with T. Higgins, but I like Joe Burrow a lot. 3, Pittsburgh. I think Russell Wilson will succeed. At what level he succeeds, I don't know. And I didn't buy Cleveland last year. I don't buy him this year. I think Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are excellent, but there's things upstairs they have to deal with, and I think it's a really good division.
I actually just completely agree with that. There's really not a whole lot to say. I think the Ravens, it would be silly to say that they're not going to win. I understand, and I think the Bengals have taken a little bit of a tiny step back. It depends on their draft picks, but their defense was not good. And I think Cincinnati's really difficult to evaluate. I was having a conversation with someone in the comments about this, because Joe Burrow is injured. So I just don't really have a whole lot of what's, what they look like. I don't have a lot of confidence in evaluating them. But the Ravens, I think are also poised to be very focused. They've upgraded. They've matured. Some of their weapons have hopefully matured and learned lessons. The only thing is that since we know Lamar Jackson has often been hurt near the end of the season, and last season was actually more considered an outlier than not, the question is can he stay healthy again? Can he do it again? Can he truly play back-to-back seasons, no injuries? That to me remains to be seen. I agree. I agree that Cleveland is just going to be Cleveland. And I think the Steelers could leapfrog Cleveland for sure. Because I don't think Russell Wilson will be this just disastrous failure. I think he'll be way more supported in Pittsburgh than he was with the Denver Broncos.
AFC South. This is now a good division. We've rolled our eyes at it for years. Get out of that. Tennessee stinks. Everybody else is good. I'm going to go Houston. I love what they've done with personnel the last 2 drafts and free agency. I think they've just hit it out of the park. I mean, they've done like Green Bay level stuff in the draft last 2 years. Excellent. Jags, and it will be a fight to the finish. I love getting Brian Thomas. Their weapons with Trevor Lawrence and an offensive coach are substantial. So I'm going to have the Colts 3. I like the Colts. I worry greatly about Anthony Richardson's playing style. Trevor Lawrence and C.J. Stroud sit in the pocket. I don't worry about that. Anthony Richardson is so dynamic, and I like this Colts team. Is he going to miss 3 or 4 starts? That could be the difference. Easiest pick in the league, Titans for 4th. I don't know if Will Levis is going to work or not.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one because there does seem to be a lot of debate about a couple of these teams. Now, I believe in the Texans. I believe that the Texans can fight for an AFC championship, quite honestly, especially if C.J. Stroud continues to grow and wasn't just like a one-season wonder of some sort. I think the Texans have true potential to be legit and elite and, be very similar to what the Eagles did a couple of years when they went to the Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts against, the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think that the Texans are for real. I believe in their coaches. I believe in their head coach. I believe in their OC to manage that offense, and I think that really matters. And I think that the Texans need to win now because they will lose their OC to a head coaching job. He is that good. And that's, again, this is exactly what happened to the Eagles. They had an elite OC in Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen left, and then the offense severely suffered because of it. So OCs matter when you don't have the brains of the offense like a Shanahan, Reed, McVay. So this is really, the Texans have the defensive head coach. So to make their offense go, they rely heavily on their OC to pull all the strings, the play calling, all of that. So the Texans, it's like, you got to go now. The Jaguars, to me, are also an incredibly hard team to evaluate. A lot of people are talking about Trevor Lawrence being a bust and this and that. His first year was a disaster, had a fired coach. That coach was, a college coach, wonky. Things got a little weird. And then the ship seemingly was righted, with Doug Peterson. Now, I think Doug Peterson is a great coach. I don't think he's an elite coach. He won the Super Bowl with the Eagles and, even famously that trick play. Yes, he had to give the okay. He had to be like, yes, but it was Nick Foles who immediately said to him and said, hey, and Philly special. And, Doug Peterson was like, okay. So he did say okay, but it wasn't his idea. So a lot of people see Frank Reich as being the brains behind that offense. So again, I would be happy with Doug Peterson as my coach. I think that he's a good coach, but I don't think he's in this just next level, bona fide, category up there. And I think Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. He's had injury issues. He's had player issues where he hasn't had a lot of help on the offense. And I think last season was very misleading. His weapons were gone, were injured, and then he was injured. He literally had like 4 different injuries in like back-to-back weeks, like something crazy like that. And a lot of people say, oh, when someone gets injured, you're using that as an excuse. I don't see it as that. As someone who's been injured a lot, which I always talk about, I know what it's like to be injured and play. Like, you are not the same. Yes, some people can get injured and they can continue to play, or they can play at a high level. There's all different levels of injuries. I mean, we've all seen it where someone rolls an ankle, especially in basketball, and it looks like, oh my God, they're never going to be able to walk again. And then 2 minutes later, they're sprinting down the court and jumping in the air and high flying. So it's hard to gauge. Some people don't have it. And I don't think Trevor Lawrence is some weak-minded guy. Shane Steichen, I think once he gets the quarterback situation ready to go, he will have that offense humming. Like I said before, he is an elite coach, an elite offensive mind, And I believe he's a good head coach too as well, but we have, the jury's still out on that. The Tennessee Titans, I just don't really see what they've done to really actually make any moves within this division.
Roster, personnel, I like the new coach they have. There you go. And finally, AFC West. Kansas City's young defense by the end of last year was a monster. They went and got Xavier Worthy. I don't know if it's going to work in the draft, but if anybody can make it work, it's Andy Reid and Mahomes. I think the Chargers become a really solid 2. I do worry about losing Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams. Lost a lot of offensive pieces, but they went out and got a Hayden Hurst. They went out and drafted a receiver. Number 3 is going to be Denver, and I think if Bo Nix hits, and I think he will, they'll be, and I also love the end they got in the draft. I think they're going to be a really good team. Good could be 9-10. I don't think it's 12-13. And the Raiders just don't have the quarterback yet, like the Raiders.
So, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are actually going to be 4th. No, I'm just kidding. I think Kansas City Chiefs, of course, will be number 1. The Chargers, I've always put the Chargers, once they got Harbaugh, on like a 2-year plan, maybe even 3-year plan, just because he got to get the pieces. That team was really messy salary cap, messy everything. Harbaugh was going in a messy situation without a doubt. The only thing that he really truly has locked in place is indeed the quarterback. I think Justin Herbert is an unbelievable quarterback and will absolutely be a star in the NFL now that he finally has a competent coach and someone that can build a legitimate team around him. And I think if you also give him time to throw and people that can actually play offense, I think he will ball out. I think he will truly ball out. So I do think that there is technically a chance for the Chargers to leapfrog Kansas City, but I'm not calling for it. I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, but put it this way. See, it's hard to gauge because it all depends on how quickly the Chargers can right the ship. If the Chargers have officially been able to right the ship, and I never try to predict type draft picks, I just don't. It's just a complete crapshoot. I'm not better than the GMs out there, or the talent, scouts. So, but if Harbaugh was able to really get the correct pieces that needs to be done, then I do think that, and Kansas City is the same offensive team that they were last year, which they struggled. There's no disputing that. The defense is what really led the charge here. Patrick Mahomes' numbers were down. Everyone kept talking about how he has no offensive weapons. Who the heck's going on? What's going on with Rashee Rice? Travis Kelce is getting older and older and older. Talks about retirement. Those are all things that if the offense is lacking, I do believe that Kansas City can be leapfrogged by like a Chargers. I really, really do. I mean, the lowly Broncos even, beat them and then almost beat them twice. So that should say a lot. The Kansas City offense was not great. But if they hit on their draft picks and they're able to upgrade and maybe Rashee Rice is able to, sidestep any issues, then I think, Kansas City will be fine. So to be very clear, I'm just saying if Kansas City has the same level of offense that they did last season, I do, and the Chargers hit, and they were able to right that ship faster than I think, then I think the Chargers could actually win this division. But to be clear, Kansas City fans, I'm not calling for it. But I think that they're absolutely vulnerable, if their offense has not upgraded. And I think the Broncos are great. I think the Broncos will be really good. There's some reports out that Bo Nix is ready to play right now, right? That he is NFL ready and will hit the ground running. And I think, again, I have strong feelings that I think Bo Nix will be a successful pick and a good quarterback, but I don't have strong feelings of whether or not he's going to be able to instantly ball out in the NFL. They should have an easier schedule. I haven't looked at it directly, but since they, didn't play well, like I believe that they should have a decent schedule, but they do have to play the Chargers twice and Kansas City twice. So, that's always interesting. But I do think that the Broncos, I don't think the Broncos could win this division this year, but I do think that they have the potential to be the number 2 and make the playoffs, wild card. That I do believe. And the Raiders, right? The Raiders are just, they still have not put it all together yet.
Like the Raiders roster, outside of quarterback. Really like the Raiders roster. All right, let's go to the NFC. I think Philadelphia's offensive pieces with an offensive coach and Jalen Hurts are substantial. This is a well-run organization that takes big swings. I'm going to take Philadelphia to win their division. They replace their coordinators. My guess is they're an upgrade over last year. I'm going to pick a little bit of a surprise. I think Washington, Jaden Daniels, all those college starts, I think they're going to be pretty feisty next year. Dan Quinn, more than competent. Cliff Kingsbury, offensive line's okay. But, I mean, even the Philadelphia Eagles' great O-line lost the Hall of Fame center. So I'm going to have a little bit of an upset here. Washington feels like a 9 to a 10 win team. Dallas will be right behind them. But they are going to be incredibly reliant on Dak Prescott. They're weak in the running back spot. They have one tight end, CeeDee Lamb. Gallup's now gone. I think they're very dependent on Dak, and the numbers tell you when Dallas gets dependent on Dak, they're not as good. Giants just don't have enough pieces. Rumors today, they're looking.
Okay, so this is interesting. I definitely think the Eagles will win. I think that they have the best roster. Arguably the best OC. I actually like, Washington's head coach, defense Dan Quinn, and their OC. I was actually a little bummed that he went to Washington. There was rumors that he was going to come to Philly, or I think also potentially Vegas, if memory serves me correctly. I actually think he's a great OC. I think he was misaligned out in Arizona and was fired and used as a scapegoat. There was all the injuries out in Arizona. Kyler Murray is a difficult quarterback to work with. I don't really know what they expected him to be able to do. So I think, he moved to Thailand or something. He booked a one-trip ticket to Thailand. He was burned out. And the thing is, I don't know if he's capable of being a head coach, right? He might not be able to handle that, which is totally fine. Not everyone can be a head coach, but they could still be an elite OC or DC. We've seen that a lot. Spags is an example of this. But so I think that Washington will definitely be a pretty good team. I think I'm not going to be sleeping on Washington at all. I think it's a toss-up between Dallas and Washington, honestly. I hear what Colin is saying. Colin's whole opinion is that Dallas is looking to not lose on purpose, but to make life very difficult for Dak, so they could potentially pay him less. That's the whole thing. They don't want to see him ball out and be like, listen, this is what happens when we don't have pieces around you. This is the type of quarterback you are. We can't pay you $60 million a year. And if you want some good pieces around you, you got to take less so we can get better pieces so you can be a better quarterback and hopefully win a Super Bowl. That's kind of the approach that it's predicted that Dallas is doing. Or they're just going to move on from him, and they don't really care if they do, hit 3 or 4, because then they'll get better draft spot. I don't know. It's always impossible to truly predict, but, that's definitely one of Colin's opinions that we talked about the other day. Yeah, and again, New York is going to be New York, so I'm not expecting anything out of them.
Going to Drew Lock at quarterback, forget it. Let's go NFC North, which I think now is probably the most talented division in football. I'm going to take Detroit. I like everything about Detroit. Even Dan Campbell. The front office is great. Jared Goff, best O-line in football, good pieces. I like everything about Detroit. I think they end up at the NFC Championship. Who they face, we'll see, but I love Detroit. I'm a huge buyer on Green Bay. Jordan Love shocked me, his improvement last year. Now, J-Mac still wants to see him 8-10 games. I was blown away by how good he was. He's just a little wild, and I think he's more Favre than Aaron Rodgers, but boy, have they drafted well. This draft, like all their drafts, excellent. Green Bay's the best drafting team in the league. We just got to own that. Number 3, and I think they'll be, they got a rookie quarterback, and there's going to be some bad Sundays, but Chicago 3. And again, they're going to be a better team. If this division was wonky, I could see them making the playoffs, but God, this talented division. And I think they're going to be a really, really fun offense to watch. And then I think Minnesota will be the best 4th-place team in football. I think Minnesota could win.
So this is an interesting division because there are, right? You have Caleb Williams, who's supposed to be the next Patrick Mahomes. You have an ascending Jordan Love in the Green Bay Packers, who smoked the Cowboys at home, and then almost beat the 49ers, who ended up going to the Super Bowl. And then you have the Detroit Lions, who had the 49ers beat, but blew it blew it by coaching, quite frankly. And so this is competitive. This is definitely a competitive division. I think it's fair to put the Detroit Lions at number 1. They are an older, more mature team now. That they're still young, but they're an older, more mature team than the Packers, with a true mature quarterback, in Goff. Goff I think is so underrated, it seems, based off the comments that I've read. People think that Goff is not that good of a quarterback. He's a great quarterback. Is he as flashy as a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen? No. But he is a great quarterback. And their OC is unbelievable. Their OC will be a head coach. No question. No question. He's so confident in his abilities, he turned down other jobs, other head coaching jobs, and said, nah, I'm going to stay with Detroit. I got some unfinished business. Plus, I want to go to a better franchise. I want to go to a better team, and so I think he's got his sights on some more blue chip areas. Like, he's thinking, hey, if the Bears have a bad season and they fire their head coach, I get to have, Caleb Williams. Or, hey, Dallas is going to be firing Mike McCarthy. I'm going to go over there. The Eagles might be firing Sirianni. Like, he wants to go to these more, complete teams rather than the Seattle, Seahawks. So that's great. Green Bay, obviously a great head coach, great team, great offensive weapons. I love Jordan Love. I've spoken extensively about how I think Jordan Love is great. The only caveat that I want to give is that he's had a rocky games, like anyone will, but everyone is really banking on his final, like post-Thanksgiving onward, as that is who Jordan Love is. We're just saying he didn't know what he was doing prior to that point, and then he finally, the lights turned on, and now he's this quarterback, and who we saw from Thanksgiving onward is who he is. And I don't know if that's 100% true. There's no real evidence to believe that that's 100% true. He went on a run, played unbelievable, and was like one of the best teams and one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, from Thanksgiving onward, which is great and unbelievable and not an easy thing to do. But to me, there's no guarantee that that's more truly who he is and not the first weeks prior to leading up to Thanksgiving. So I think that there's still some time to let this bake for a second and see, but I do think Jordan Love is a great quarterback, and I lean towards him being great rather than not so great. I think he is definitely like a top ascending quarterback, but still has growth. I think he's still raw. Like that one throw that he made in the, for the interception, against the 49ers, all young players are going to make mistakes like that. So it's just, it is what it is. But it was a pretty bad decision. So I think if anything, it just highlighted his lack of maturity, which again can be expected. So I don't hold his feet to the fire. But technically in that moment, he did have an opportunity to show, look how mature I am. Look, I am ready. And it doesn't mean that he has to win that game, but he could just manage that pressure, that situation a little bit better. And I don't think he did. But again, all quarterbacks make terrible throws. All quarterbacks make mistakes. Patrick Mahomes threw one of the worst interceptions this past Super Bowl, and no one's like, man, Patrick Mahomes is a bad decision maker. So again, not holding his feet to the fire, but that was a moment for him to be like, hey, I am for real. I am here. And he didn't do it. And so, you can't completely discount that. I think Caleb Williams and the Bears will be great. I don't know if they have what it takes to really make a run this coming season, but I definitely think it's possible. I definitely think it's possible that they could make a wild card. And I think the Minnesota will be a good team, but they don't have enough relative to all the other teams.
8 or 9 games. I love their offensive pieces, but again, it's just sometimes the 5th best team in the SEC could win the Big 12. I just feel like Minnesota picked the wrong division. Let's go to the NFC South. I think it's a slam dunk. I think Atlanta's going to win this division. Tampa's going to be feisty. But we're going to forget about the Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix drama. This is a really good football team offensively. Raheem Morris, Shark Cat. Tampa's 2. And again, I think it'll be a feisty battle. Tampa also had a great draft. Their first 4 picks, all really nice players. I'm going to do Carolina 3rd. I'm with J-Mac. I think they finally got Bryce Young some weapons. I think they're going to make a surge next year. I don't like, right now, New Orleans' situation. I just don't feel good about it. I'm going to have the Saints 4th. Maybe they're 3rd, but
All right. I definitely think the Falcons win. And if they truly got Bryce Young weapons, then I think then the Panthers can leapfrog the Tampa Bay Bucks. I do not think Baker Mayfield is a good, consistent week in and week out quarterback. I just don't. I don't think he's trash. I don't think he's garbage. I don't think he should be cut from the league and never playing again. I think he's deserving to be a starting quarterback, but I think last season was more misleading than people give it credit to. It was a disaster. They played a lot of weak teams, and then even in the playoffs, people look at that. They played a Eagles team that was completely falling apart, that was injured, no A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts had an injured knee and a dislocated finger. Coaches were being fired. They switched DCs they couldn't tackle. Like Troy Aikman and Joe Buck were like blown away by. They said when we met with the Eagles, pre-game, he's like they just looked like they had no fight in them, and it was like that game had like the most yards after contact that like we've ever seen. So I just think it's even them just winning that playoff game is incredibly misleading.
I just don't like the way it feels right now. I'm not sure that coach is going to be there next year by Thanksgiving. Finally, another really, really good division. I think the Rams had a great draft. I think they played at the end of last year. They got that O-line right. I'm going to take the Rams to edge out San Francisco in that division, and Matt Stafford is the difference. Puka Nacua now going in. Cooper Kupp is healthy. The O-line is fantastic. The Niners' offensive line is very much in question, and we don't know their receiver situation. They'll be good. I don't think they'll be quite as good as last year. They're second. Arizona third. I gotta be honest with you. I think Arizona has a chance to make the playoffs. I watched them at the end of last year. That new coach, they play hard. They play hard. And Seattle, a talented fourth-place team.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think it's also another toss-up between the Rams and the 49ers. I really do. Listen, I've spoke positively about Brock Purdy. I think he's a good quarterback. He's not as good as Matthew Stafford. That's the reality. And I think the 49ers have obviously some great weapons, but their weapons are older. And, their weapons are also more physical. And so can Christian McCaffrey and Kittle and Debo and Ayuk, if they're all even there by the start of the season, can they stay healthy? Like, if they all stay 100% healthy again, then I think the 49ers will win the division. But it's hard to imagine that Christian McCaffrey, won't miss a couple games. Debo won't miss a couple games. It's hard to imagine that. And I think the Rams were a little misleading because, they had a bunch of injuries concerns in the beginning of the season, and then they finally got all healthy, and then they were a great team. They were a good team. There's no question about that. They could have beat the Detroit Lions and went to the NFC Championship game. That was definitely a true that was in the realm of possibility. Without a doubt. And I think Puka Nacua will also continue to ascend. I think Kupp is not exactly what he was a few years ago, which is okay. But he's still obviously an amazing wide receiver. And you have Sean McVay. To me, that's the big thing, is that you still have Shanahan and McVay. And those two offensive geniuses will find a way to make their teams score points, right? They just will. No matter what is going on, they will find a way. So I think this is a true toss-up between those two teams. To me, it'll really come down to who is healthy. Who is healthy? If both these teams are truly, fully 100% healthy, I would probably say the 49ers. That is what I will typically lean on. But yeah, I think it may also come down to strength of schedule as well. And, which team plays, does one of these teams play a team where, so-and-so is down, where, gosh, I can't even think of anyone off the top of my head, but they play a tough game. They play the Chiefs, and Puka Nacua, rolled an ankle and is out for the remainder of the game. I think it could be like that, thin of a line in terms of margin of error between who wins this division versus not. The Cardinals, I think they'll be better because I think Kyler Murray is still a good quarterback and still a worthy starting quarterback, but I don't see them making moves. I don't see them somehow, limping into the playoffs or beating San Francisco or the Rams for, a division title. And right, the Seattle Seahawks are just the Seattle Seahawks. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys think about Colin's, early NFL standings? And what do you think about my opinions on them? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.